Good morning, my coolest of kids. How's everybody doing on this steamy, sunny, hot Tuesday morning? Your buddy Rob is actually doing a promotion at one of the local retail stores the town over. I'll even tell you, it's Target. And it doesn't start until later this morning. So I figured I would get a little video out of the way. I do get I believe this one was from a weekly magazine that I get. And I was reading through an article and it touched heart. It hit me right in the sweet spot. So I figured I'd share it with you guys. So it starts off, there's a man that's actually, he just got into his early 40s. He was divorced, he has a child and everything. It's not, nothing bad happened, just didn't work out. He'd worked for a taxi company for about 10-15 years. He really enjoyed that type of work, so he saved up. And finally, after, those 10-15 years of working there, he was able to apply and get a business license and have a car to be able to start his own taxi company. So he quits that taxi place and starts up his own work, his own his own company. So he's very happy. He's just got that going. He'd saved up enough so he had some advertising and such. And it was about 2 weeks in, and he'd been doing all right for himself. And he got a call from a local hospice saying that they needed a pickup of an elderly woman and bring her back over. It was very early. It was before his normal hours, so he said sure, not a problem. He goes over to the address that they had him pick her up at, and he honks twice and waits. A couple minutes go by, and for his old company he would have just had to take off. You just go, you don't worry about it, all done. But he enjoyed this work, and he enjoyed the people, he enjoyed the rides and the talks with people as well. And he decided to go up to the door. Now this is his company now. He can do things the way he wants to. So he goes up to the door, knocks very loud, and she goes, hello, hello, taxi. And he hears an elderly woman go, oh, I'm so sorry, hold on, I didn't hear you. And then he hears like a slow drag of a suitcase, and he goes, ma'am, do you need help? And she says, no, I'll be right there. The door opens, and it's this little old lady. And he goes, I'll take your bags for you, ma'am. And she goes, thank you. And he runs back to the taxi, puts the bag in there, runs back and puts his arm out to be able to, escort her to back to the taxi. And she goes, oh, what a breath of fresh air. This is just wonderful. And he walks her back to the taxi, and they start driving towards the hospice center. And she goes, do you mind maybe driving through downtown on the way to the hospice? And he goes, ma'am, that's very far out of the way. And she goes, I know, but I just have a lot of memories, and without family around, living in this area, I'm not going to be able to get out very often with with the hospice place that I'm going to be moving to. This is my last moment at my home. And he had thought when he opened the door that the house looked really empty. And come to find out, she told him that her husband had just passed away. Her only daughter lived on the other side of the country, and none of her family lived nearby. So this was her saying goodbye to her home. So what does he do? He shuts off the meter and starts driving through town. She's already touched his heart. And on the way, while they're driving, he just starts going through town. She doesn't even tell him where to go, but she's an elderly woman, probably in her 80s. And everywhere they seem to pull up to, every stop sign, everything, she had a memory to point out, to tell him, oh, I used to dance in that studio over there in my free time, and I would do a lot of the shows over at the theater over there. And, I used to work at that diner over there. My daughter went to school here, and, it was just literally, he was just taking a route through the town, just driving around, and she was just telling him stories about all the different places. And finally she goes, I'm getting tired, we should drive to the hospice now. So they drive and they pull up, and he goes inside real quick to the front desk and tells them, who it is, who's here and everything. And they come out to be able to let her inside. And as he goes to actually say goodbye to her and give her a hug, she tries to ask him, how much is that? How much was that? I took up your entire morning, and I know that you didn't have to do that, and I appreciate, the time that you spent with me so very much. And he goes, what, no bill at all, honestly, ma'am. Just tell everyone how much, how I did, and, put the good word out there for me. Well, she gave him a big hug, started crying, and she took down his name and his phone number just so she could tell people about him. 2 weeks later, he gets a phone call from a woman. It was the woman's daughter, and the woman who had actually passed away. about a week later from when he dropped her off at the hospice. You know, just from being out of her home her whole life and losing her husband, and you know, no family around or anything else, and you know, it was too much for her. She was done. It was too much for her. She was gone, and the daughter goes, "So you must be so and so, his name?" And he goes, "Yes, ma'am. I'm very sorry for your loss. And you know, she was a wonderful woman. I had so many, like a really wonderful ride with her. She was the best drive that I've ever had. You know, best ride I've ever had. And I've been driving a taxi for 15, 20 years." And she goes, "Well, you must have made some sort of an impact on her, because when I talked to her on the phone, she was saying how wonderful and a breath of fresh air you were, and how amazing you made it, you know, for the transition for her to get over there. Oh, and she also left you over $10,000 in stocks, and we ended up just selling those off for you. And before you argue, I want you to take it, because you were the last bright moment that my mother had. I didn't get a chance to get out there before she passed away." And you know, he said, "I can't do that, man. I can't do that." And she goes, "Well, actually, I'm out right now. I was over at the house, and we were actually, we had a month left on that house because it had been sold, the mother's house that they had moved out of, where that woman had actually grown up." And she goes, "I really need to meet you." So he goes over there to the original address where he'd picked her up, and the woman was actually there, and they were all moving the stuff and trying to get everything out of the way because the house had been sold a couple weeks before that. And she runs up, gives him a huge, biggest hug, and hands him the check and says, "Now be on your way and take it." And so that's the end of the story. And the reason this story was even told is because that woman, that daughter, was one of the writers for the magazine. And that was a true story. That was a story of her mother passing away and the final ride that she took. So just remember that, your every day when you're doing something, it might mean a lot more to somebody else, even though it's just a regular everyday certain thing for you. So make sure you're always realizing that, it's not all about you. The world doesn't revolve around you. And, it's a much bigger place than any of us could ever imagine. And the littlest action that we can take might change a person's entire point of view. And, not trying to sound greedy or anything, but it might end up helping you out in the long run. Like, the person's having their stocks sold off and them being yourself being put into a will for over $10,000 to some woman you never barely met once. But anyways, positive vibes for a positive life, and always portray the best possible version of you, not only to everyone that can see you, but by also staying true to yourself. Have yourselves a great day.